Good morning. I'd like to call to order the open meeting for Thursday, October 16th, 2025. I will now ask the Commission Secretary for information on today's agenda.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, October 2nd, 2025, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes of the open meeting of Thursday, October 2nd, 2025.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Each commissioner has independently reviewed the agenda, and each has informed me there is no need to discuss the notices associated with agenda items 2 through 10, or the draft final decision in docket 3270 TE 120 associated with agenda item 11.
I move we approve the notices of investigation associated with agenda items 2 through 8.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. I move we approve the notices of proceeding associated with agenda items 9 and 10.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. In docket 3270 TE 120, I move we approve the draft final decision.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. That brings us to our first discussion item of today, number 12, which is docket 4220 BS 101, the application of Northern States Power Company, Wisconsin for approval to acquire ownership of the Elk Creek Solar Generating Facility and Battery Energy Storage System in the town of Springbrook, which is located in Dunn County, Wisconsin. The Elk Creek facilities are comprised of a utility-scale solar-powered electric generating facility consisting of up to 300 megawatts of solar generating nameplate capacity and 76.6 megawatts alternating current of battery energy storage system nameplate capacity. This transaction's cost is approximately $752.2 million, including AFUDC, or authorized funds used during construction. On the applicant, so that's our total project cost right here. Just some brief background. On October 16th of 2023, in docket 9819 CE 100, Elk Creek PV1 LLC, a wholly owned entity of an independent power producer called Tire Energy Development Renewables, or TED LLC, was granted a certificate of public convenience and necessity by the commission to construct this solar generation facility. Under the proposed transaction before us today, NSPW would acquire the project development rights from Elk Creek PV1 LLC. The acquisition includes the purchase of transmission interconnection rights, property rights, the CPCN, and other permits, and ownership and operation of the Elk Creek facilities. So in short, the applicant would acquire, construct, own, and operate Elk Creek. So before us today, there are two decision items in this docket: one, approval of the acquisition, and two, order conditions. I will state up front that through my review and analysis, it's clear to me that this project meets Wisconsin statutory requirements and actually goes above and beyond due to the Minnesota IRP process, which I will discuss in a bit, and therefore I do support approving the acquisition. The staff memo on this project was very well written and laid out, so I'm going to borrow heavily from it in my discussion. So in this docket, it is a slightly different record and analytical process than usual due to the fact that the applicant, NSPW, plans its electric generation and production system in conjunction with its sister utility, Northern States Power Company, Minnesota, or NSPM. NSPM is required to file a multi-state integrated resource plan, or IRP, every 2 years with the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission. The purpose of the IRP review process is to identify and provide transparency into the energy and capacity needs of the multi-state Northern States Power, or NSP, system as a whole, and to use modeling, analysis, and stakeholder input to determine what types of resources may be best suited to meet those needs in the future. Both NSPM and NSPW rely on the NSP system to meet the electrical needs of its customers. The utilities operate on an interchange agreement approved by FERC to allocate costs to the respective utilities, and all costs for NSP electric production and transmission are included in the interchange agreement process and shared between NSPW and NSPM. I do want to note here that the NSP system is comprised of operations in Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Michigan, and that Wisconsin utilities are not required to file IRPs, but both Minnesota and Michigan utilities do require IRP filings, which analyze the entirety of NSP's system, including facilities and customers located in other states. Next, I'm just going to provide some brief information about NSP's actual IRP due to its relevancy to this project. In a previously approved IRP, NSP proposed retiring its coal fleet by 2030, resulting in a reduction of 2,400 megawatts of baseload coal units and replacement of that capacity with thousands of megawatts of new renewable resources. In 2024, NSP filed and settled its most recent IRP with the Minnesota Public Utility Commission. This proposal included a preferred plan which relies on an extension of life of NSP nuclear units and the addition of renewable resource generation supported by dispatchable natural gas-fired generating units. While the 5-year action plan included in the IRP settlement outlined resource addition targets of 3,200 megawatts of wind, 400 megawatts of solar, and 600 megawatts of standalone battery storage by 2030, the overall preferred plan contemplates adding a large number of cumulative capacity resources from 2024 through 2040, including 1,439 megawatts of solar and 2,100 megawatts of battery. The applicant considers the Elk Creek project a viable option to fulfill a portion of the IRP solar and storage resources needed. If approved today, the Elk Creek project will add 300 megawatts in solar and 76.6 megawatts AC in storage in the fourth quarter of 2028. The applicant indicated that the Elk Creek project was identified as a cost-effective and technically feasible resource to fulfill a portion of the solar and storage needs identified in the IRP. It states that Elk Creek will deliver capacity and energy to the NSP system while adding reliability. It also indicated that the Elk Creek project costs are comparable to other similar projects reviewed, and that the applicant's primary justification for seeking to acquire this project is its conclusion that the project is consistent with the filed and settled IRP in Minnesota. Further, the applicant discussed several other important factors considered. One, a preference for resources within Zone 1 to avoid price differentials between zones. Elk Creek is in load resource Zone 1, so check. Second, a preference for resources within NRIS, check. Interconnection issues, especially timing and viability. So this Elk Creek would connect to NSP Wisconsin's transmission system, and it already went through the MISO 2021 cycle and has an executed interconnection agreement. So that's checked. Permitting and local public acceptance of the project. As I mentioned earlier, this project has already received a CPCN from the commission, so those requirements are met. Timeline. As I just mentioned, the proposed in-service date of the project is 2028, which meets the identified IRP need for energy storage and solar in the late 2020s and early 2030s. Project costs, so like I said, it's comparable. Here we have about $1,817 per kilowatt for the solar facility and $1,456 per kilowatt for the battery energy storage system, which is shown to be comparable to other solar projects recently approved by the commission, thereby demonstrating this project's cost effectiveness. Check. And finally, project design and output. So these are the major key attributes that led to the selection of Elk Creek and the subsequent pursuit of its acquisition here. I found that the project application clearly articulated the evaluation process considered for new renewable resource additions, and that the in-depth, robust, and rigorous development, review, and analysis of the NSP IRP in Minnesota gave me great confidence in the general process and specific outcomes that ultimately led to the request before us today. Moreover, in my review and analysis of the record, I agree that many aspects of this project, including generation and storage capacity, types of resources, and project timing, strongly align with the needs identified in NSP's IRP. In addition, the record demonstrated the viability of the project from a modeling perspective through both the Minnesota IRP modeling discussion and staff's analysis of it. I will reiterate the uniqueness of this request due to the system-wide approach, the interchange agreement, and the Minnesota IRP process that this project was subject to. Those alone give me great confidence in the approval of this acquisition, but I will now also turn to the applicable Wisconsin legal standards here. Wisconsin Statute Section 196.49 sub 3 sub B provides that the commission may refuse to certify an acquisition if it appears that it will do any of the following. 1, substantially impair the efficiency of the service of the public utility. 2, provide facilities unreasonably in excess of the probable future requirements. Or 3, when placed in operation, add to the cost of service without proportionately increasing the value or available quantity of service. It's clear to me that the proposed acquisition meets the applicable statutory criteria of this statute and is in the public interest. On the first criterion regarding whether or not the acquisition would substantially impair the efficiency of service of the public utility, Commission staff did not identify any evidence that the acquisition of Elk Creek would substantially impair the efficiency of the service of NSPW, and neither did I. On the second criterion, whether or not the acquisition would provide facilities unreasonably in excess of the probable future requirements of the applicant, the record demonstrates NSP has specific additional capacity needs due to an anticipated load increase, largely attributable to new data center loads and deployment of electric vehicles, as well as broader capacity needs due to its overall fleet transition that requires retirement of legacy fossil fuel-fired generating facilities to meet carbon dioxide emissions reduction goals. Further, NSPW has stated needs for additional generation capacity based on planned electric generation retirements and customer load growth. The third criterion asks whether the acquisition will add to the applicant's cost of service without proportionally increasing the value or quantity of service to its customers. The record indicates that Elk Creek is a cost-effective, clean energy resource addition that is part of the modeled preferred plan. Therefore, while the acquisition may add to the cost of service, it would also proportionally increase the value or quantity of service, thus satisfying this criterion. There are several other familiar considerations that are also present here. The Energy Priorities Law, which is Wisconsin Statute Section 196.025, which provides that to the extent cost-effective, technically feasible, and environmentally sound, the commission shall implement the priorities under Wisconsin Statute Section 1.124 in making all energy-related decisions. The proposed transaction here is the acquisition of new solar electric generation and battery storage facility. As such, it is a non-combustible renewable energy resource and is afforded the highest priority of all generation resources under the Energy Priorities Law. No circumstances exist in which any of the higher priorities listed in the EPL statute would be applicable, because this is the highest priority, nor would they prove cost-effective, technically feasible alternatives to this proposed acquisition. Secondly, environmental impacts have been considered. This is a Type 3 action. No unusual circumstances suggesting the likelihood of significant effects on the human environment have come to light. Neither an environmental impact statement nor an environmental assessment are required here, partially because the environmental impacts of the Elk Creek project were contemporaneously evaluated in the 2023 CPCN docket through its respective environmental assessment, and those findings are incorporated into this docket. Therefore, the proposed acquisition complies with applicable statute and code on this front. The determination of whether brownfields were used to the extent practicable, as noted in the commission memo, the underlying CPCN docket authorizing Elk Creek included an analysis as part of the environmental assessment I just mentioned. Because no party contested this issue or introduced any evidence contrary to this finding, the use of brownfields was not practicable. To summarize, it is clear the applicant's requested acquisition of the project fits squarely within the company's long-term resource planning goals. The project will deliver capacity, energy, and reliability to the NSP system in a timeframe consistent with the IRP. The project costs are comparable with similar projects filed before the commission, and the project is expected to produce measurable ancillary local economic benefits. Most importantly, it complies with all applicable Wisconsin statutory requirements. For these reasons, and in consideration of the entirety of the record in this docket, I do support approval of the transaction as proposed in the application, which puts me at alternative 1. Our second decision item today pertains to order conditions. Commission staff have identified a number of order conditions from similar previous decisions that we may decide to apply to this transaction. Notably, the proposed conditions here are almost the exact same as the conditions approved by the commission in a similar recent docket, 5BS 276, which was the joint application of Webco, WPSC, and MG&E for approval to acquire the High Noon electric generation facility in Best. There's only one minor difference here. Here I support all the conditions proposed by commission staff, which would put me at alternative 1. In this docket, the applicant requested modifications to standard conditions 2, 9, 11, 13, 14, and 17 through its comments to the commission memo. While I appreciate the applicant's suggestions and the close attention they paid to the conditions, I am not supportive of those right at this time. While I'm often open to consideration of modified condition language, any proposed modification must sufficiently demonstrate why it is necessary to change the standard condition language and include a reasonable explanation as to how the proposed modification does not unreasonably alter the intent of the standard condition as written. To state it bluntly, modifications should, and usually do, undergo a thorough examination and analysis that includes consideration and discussion in the record between staff, applicants, interveners, etc. The process in this docket did not include that back and forth that is critical to understanding the justification for proposed changes, nor does it provide some level of comfort that the changes will not result in unintended consequences. The absence of that dialogue and clear justification here gives me pause. Nothing in the record led me to believe any of the applicant's proposed changes were actually necessary. Although the modifications appear minor and small in nature, it's not clear that they won't have unintended consequences. At the bare minimum, the lack of consistency across similar transactions may cause confusion. Therefore, again, I'm at alternative 1 on this item, which would be to approve the transaction per the alternative selected above with all conditions proposed by commission staff. So those are my positions and justification on the decision items. I will now turn it over to my colleagues for them to share theirs, starting with Commissioner Nieto.
Thank you, Chairperson Strand. I appreciate your opening remarks. Just as an initial item, I'll note that I'm also at alternative 1 to approve the acquisition. I am at alternative 2 on conditions, and appreciate what you just said about modifying conditions through this process. And I would agree, I did identify 4 conditions that we could remove from the list as either duplicative or not relevant to the project at hand. I won't reiterate your analysis, which I agree with, regarding the underlying justification for approving the acquisition, including related to the legal standards, the project cost, the project attributes. I agree with what you discussed in that regard. And so getting directly into those conditions under the alternative 2 that I was at, I would strike condition numbers 9 and 10 as duplicative of order conditions 33 and 34 in the underlying CPCN, being conditions that transfer to the applicant in the acquisition. And then I had identified that I would strike 13 and 14. Those could be omitted as they are associated with transactions that include multi-party they're multi-party acquisitions with shares, and that is not applicable here. I would not modify the wording of any of the standard conditions, however. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Hawkins?
Thanks. I am with both of my colleagues at Alt 1 for approving the transaction of the applicant as proposed. I agree with the assessment laid out by the chair, and I just wanted to give a shout out to the staff analysis on a lot of the modeling that went on, even though, as Chair Strand pointed out, the IRP process in Minnesota is robust and thorough. There was a really detailed and involved review of those modeling outputs and also requests for additional information. And we ran into some roadblocks there, but we're able to get a collection of very useful bits of information from the applicant that supported the transaction that was useful. And I think Chair Strand mentioned that the comparable project cost was a key part of that. And so I just wanted to acknowledge the work that went into that sort of thorough review of the, I think that was part of the demonstration of the 3 criteria that need to be met as far as efficiency and cost effectiveness. So I am at Alt 1. I'm in a similar place to Commissioner Nieto on our order conditions. I only planned on omitting 3 of the order conditions and not 4 of them. And I was at cutting order point 9 as well as 13 and 14 for the reasons that Commissioner Nieto just explained. I was proposing to keep order point 10 simply because the language does directly address the prior CPCN decision. And so while it might be inherently incorporated, I thought it wasn't duplicative just because it is sort of speaking to our prior order as I read it. So, so that's why I was only proposing to eliminate 3 of the 4 that you suggested, Commissioner Nieto. And I share the concerns that Chair Strand raised on the other proposals, especially the lack of back and forth and potential unintended consequences. While, you know, at face value, they might appear reasonable, it's just really difficult to fully understand what the downsides could be. So echo the appreciation for the in-depth review of the conditions by the applicant, but it wasn't really enough to persuade me that those changes were necessary. So those are my positions.
Thank you. So to recap, you both support the removal of conditions 9, 13, and 14, and Commissioner Nieto supports the removal of condition 10. I'm fine with removing duplicative conditions. As you guys know, that's one of my favorite things to do when we do actually have the back and forth and the more prolonged discussion regarding those, so I can join you there. Anything else that you would like to add to Commissioner Hawkins' comments regarding condition 10?
I don't necessarily see how 10 is pointing back at the underlying CPCN and adding to it. I see it as the same requirement in the underlying CPCN, essentially saying that if construction hasn't taken place, if no request for an extension has been made, and time elapses, then the certificate is void and has lapsed, and I see it as the same thing that we already required under the underlying CPCN, and that timeline under the underlying CPCN would still be in place, so it's not like a new fresh timeline starts or anything like that. It's, so I didn't quite see that distinction. I'm not strongly opposed to keeping it in for this one, but I did still see it as duplicative.
My feeling on that is that if we do have this, maybe a difference in opinion or a little bit of doubt, that the default would be to potentially keep the standard condition, just to make sure that we're not doing something, that we're interpreting it correctly and that we're not getting rid of something that we actually might need. But I'm tiebreaker, so you guys decide what you want to do.
No, I hear what Commissioner Nieto is saying. I think the plan you just laid out would just give me a little bit more comfort. I'm not going to go back and review all of the
Sure.
prior and try to find those connections. So I think to be safe, as you said, maybe keeping it in for now. But if that leaves a redundant one, I apologize that we didn't get to fully exercise your passion for removing those. So
We might have another shot at that in a future ISL,
Definitely.
and
I can't
look
wait
at it
to
then.
review and get rid of more duplicative conditions. Okay, so Commissioner Nieto, are you okay with striking just 9, 13, and 14? Or do you want to stay?
Nope, I'm okay with
Okay, great.
what you're both at.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, so I believe that we are in agreement then on all the positions regarding the approval of the acquisition and the order conditions. So I think that we're ready for motion. Do you have everything you need?
Yep.
Great.
In docket 4220 BS 101, I move we approve Northern States Power Company, Wisconsin's request to acquire ownership of the Elk Creek Solar Electric Generating Facility and Battery Energy Storage System consistent with our discussion.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you both very much. Our last discussion item today is number 13, docket 9300 SI 128, the complaint of the Town of Liberty Grove and the Town of Liberty Grove Sanitary District Number 1 against the Village of Sister Bay concerning sewer rates. Commissioner Nieto is going to lead our discussion of this, so I will hand it over to her now. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairperson Strand. On March 31st, 2025, the Town of Liberty Grove and Liberty Grove Sanitary District Number 1 filed a formal complaint with the Commission, and the complaint alleges that the respondent, the Village of Sister Bay, is charging unreasonable and unjustly discriminatory sewer rates in violation of Wisconsin Statute Section 66.0821 sub 5. This complaint includes 4 main claims. Number 1, that Sister Bay implemented rate increases that are not based on cost of service and are therefore unreasonable. Number 2, that Sister Bay overcollected fixed expenses for the wastewater treatment plant, essentially charging twice for certain costs. 3, that Sister Bay overcollected debt expenses by not properly accounting for revenues from hauled waste customers. And 4, that Sister Bay's overall revenue collections are excessive, resulting in cash reserves far beyond what is needed to operate the system. I'll preview that I've reviewed the complaint, and I did find sufficient cause to proceed to a hearing, which would put me at alternative 2. I found sufficient cause on 3 of the 4 claims. However, I will be interested in hearing my colleagues' analysis here, and will point out that for me, this wasn't an incredibly clear-cut determination, but more of a close call on a couple of the claims. In terms of the requirements that we're looking at today, we do have a very specific set of requirements that we are applying to this complaint. As I mentioned, this is a complaint under Chapter 66 of the statutes, which is municipal law. And the provision that we're looking at for a sewer complaint gives the commission authority to investigate complaints related to sewer utility rates, rules, and practices. Our staff has performed the initial investigation as provided for in the statute, and the issue at hand for us today is not to decide who's right, but determine whether there's sufficient cause on one or more of the claims. If it appears that there is sufficient cause in any of the claims, on those specific grounds, we must set the matter for a hearing to determine whether the rates, rules, or practices are unreasonable or unjustly discriminatory, and if so, to fix reasonable rates, rules, or practices by order. Sufficient cause is the applicable legal standard and is similar to probable cause. These sewer investigation dockets are somewhat unique in that the Commission's preliminary decision whether to find sufficient cause is constrained to the complaint itself, and that the complaint contains sufficient detail such that the Commission and parties can obtain a fair idea of what the complaint is and see that there is some basis for recovery. And this investigation docket in particular is unusual in terms of the lengthy procedural background and longstanding disagreements between the parties. The legislature has made a policy decision to only base sufficient cause on the complaint in sewer investigation dockets in particular. And Wisconsin courts have held that sufficient cause for the complaint is limited to the four corners of the complaint itself. Therefore, the scope is limited in terms of what the decision for the Commission is at this point today. And again, Sister Bay is not rate regulated by the Commission, so in our review related to unjust and unreasonably discriminatory rates, rules, and practices, we do take care to grant due deference to the sewer utility in its rate setting. We did have a couple of threshold questions to look at prior to looking at the claims themselves. One was the question regarding whether the settlement agreement that was entered into between the village and the town in 2021 in any way precludes the town from exercising its right to complain under Chapter 66 of the statutes. And then that second threshold question was the question of whether or not the complainant is a user of the system. We don't see many sewer complaints brought to us, but when we do, there typically is a dispute about whether the complainant is a user of the wastewater system under the statutes and whether that complainant has standing to bring a complaint. With regard to these questions, I found the complainant clearly has a right to complain under Chapter 66 of the statutes and does have standing as evidence shows the complainant is a user. Regarding the substance of the complaint itself, I think the relevant issue in this complaint is whether the rates that are currently in effect, the 2025 rates, are potentially unjust or unreasonably discriminatory, such that upon hearing, the Commission may determine to fix new rates going forward. I think it's already clear that the town is no longer a decision maker in the rate setting process, but rather has input in its capacity as a user of the system. The complainant has brought this complaint, has standing, and generally takes issue with the rates being an apparently higher than necessary across the board inflationary type increase that was built on top of an underlying cost of service study and revenue allocation that the complainant identified as flawed. Looking at the four claims, I did not find sufficient cause on claim one. That was the general claim regarding whether Sister Bay's rate increase is not based on cost of service and is therefore unreasonable. The complainant provided information that the village's 2025 rate increase is based upon demonstrable errors, an inaccurate cost of service study, and is therefore unreasonable. And I would just say on this one, this is more of kind of a general umbrella claim. To me, the state legislature grants sewerage systems rate-making authority and grants that to the local municipality. And in the past, the Commission has granted deference to the municipality to a degree. And the Commission does not choose or ascertain an ideal or even preferred method of rate-making, but rather, if there were to be a hearing in this case, would make an affirmative determination regarding whether the disputed rate is unreasonable. I do disagree with the respondents' argument on this claim that the complaint is not timely. We are talking about whether or not the rates that are in effect right now are just, but I did not find probable cause related to this general claim. I did find probable cause on claims 2 and 3, which are a bit more specific and are in part specific subsets of claim 1, essentially. Claim 2 is whether Sister Bay's overcollection of wastewater treatment plant fixed expense is unreasonable. And the complainant alleges the village's rates double collect the $108,721 of allocated costs to the hauled waste customers by collecting these costs through both fixed charges to the village and Liberty Grove Utility District customers and volumetric rates to hauled waste customers. And if the allocated cost to hauled waste customers of the $108,000 plus is excluded from the rate calculation, as it should be, this would have resulted in a fixed charge that is almost $20 lower than the current fixed charge. And so the complainant in this claim describes how the accounting is incorrect. And of course, the 2025 rates are built upon that accounting as their foundation. And then claim 3 is whether Sister Bay's overcollection of wastewater treatment plant debt expense is unreasonable. The complainant provides that if debt service costs are properly allocated to hauled waste customers, as they should be, and if the rate is properly calculated based on the correct number of equivalent meters, the debt charge rate to both Liberty Grove Utility District and village customers would be less. And here again, the complainant describes how the accounting is incorrect. I did find probable cause on those two claims. And then 4 is whether Sister Bay's overcollection of utility revenue is excessive and unreasonable. And in this claim, the complainant states that the village's plan, according to 2024 cash flow forecasts, is to continue increasing rates and generating positive cash flow each year. The forecasts show wastewater treatment plant reserves of over $4 million by 2030 after financing a $15 million wastewater treatment plant project in 2027. The complainant states it is unreasonable to generate excessive revenues. On one side, I disagree that it is unreasonable for a sewer utility to establish rates to generate excess revenues. And there is a provision in municipal law that does provide that the governing body of the municipality may establish sewerage service charges in an amount to meet all or part of the requirements for construction, reconstruction, improvement, et cetera, for the system. However, excess isn't the same as excessive. And to the extent that Sister Bay's current sewer rates may exceed expenses, it appears the level of excess could potentially, but not definitively, be unreasonable. I'm not certain, and I believe a hearing would provide facts necessary related to this claim, and therefore I would move forward on this claim as well. So therefore, I'm at alternative 2, determine there does appear to be probable cause, instruct staff to proceed with a hearing on one or more of the claims, and to repeat, those claims would be numbers 2, 3, and 4. With that, I will turn it over to my colleagues, starting with Chairperson Strand.
Thank you very much for that description and explanation. I'm also at alternative 2. My interpretation of what is being asked of us is that is very limited to whether or not there's sufficient cause for the complaint to proceed. Based on that limited question before us, I didn't necessarily engage in the sufficiency of each claim, because to me, those are the types of things that need to happen in the investigation, and the options were pretty open-ended to us in terms of one or more of the claims. Kind of reiterate some of the things that Commissioner Nato said. While sufficient cause is not literally defined, it's very similar to probable cause, and to me, that's a very low bar to clear. To me, it's very clear that there's sufficient cause to proceed, as evidenced by a number of the things that Commissioner Nato discussed, and also the voluminous record here, including the significant amount of back and forth and key background documents and the numerous highly contested, unresolved issues between the parties. To me, that's just showing probable cause and just begging for further investigation, hearing, et cetera. I also liken the commission's sufficient cause determination or question here to a recent docket, the City of Kaukauna, Heart of the Valley Sewage District issue. To me, we agreed that there was sufficient cause there. It's very clear to me that there's sufficient cause here, and that those are somewhat similar situations in terms of what's before us right now. I think it's also important to point out, as Commissioner Nato stated several times, that while a sufficient cause determination here would result in proceeding to the next step of the process, so an investigation or slash hearing. That doesn't mean that we must end up determining that these are in fact unjust or unreasonable rates, or that the various claims create legally viable remedies. That's, again, an analysis to occur later. So just on this limited sufficient cause determination, I am at alternative 2 and would support moving forward with this. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Strand. And to clarify, just in the difference of how we looked at the individual claims, if this moves forward to hearing, then you would be okay with claim number 1 being included in the scope of the hearing, and you wouldn't support eliminating claim 1 from the scope?
I think I would just be okay saying 1 or more and then allowing the investigation to just proceed more generally on the types of information that was raised at this point in the process.
Okay, thank you.
Rather than specifying, but I think that's allowed based on the wording of the alternative.
Yep. I
Just
do
to
too
not
on that.
preclude certain things, you know what I mean? Just keep it broad for now.
Keep it general.
Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Hawkins?
Thanks. I had a similar interpretation as Chair Strand, where I didn't evaluate the sufficiency of the individual claims. And it kind of goes to what Commissioner Nieto, you were saying about how 2 and 3 are sort of subparts of claim 1. And so I wasn't able to unravel them. And if they were connected, I thought that those determinations would come up in a hearing as is appropriate. So I was also at alternative 2 and feel that there is sufficient cause to proceed to a hearing of 1 or more of the claims. And I thought your descriptions of 2 through 4 all made sense and lined up with my reading of what was going on. And I'll just note that there was already a lot of back and forth in the record we have here, and I, had to sort of limit to what we have in the complaint. And so I do think a hearing is already off to a good start based on what I've seen. There's already a lot of information that has been shared. So for those reasons, I'm in a similar place as Chair Strand at all 2.
Thank you. And I can join you both in just the general determination without specifically striking claim 1. I think my concern with claim 1 is its general addressing of the municipality's approach to its cost of service study, and some of the critiques of that approach were critiques that were much more specific than the level of detail we would get into as the commission upon a hearing in terms of giving that deference to the municipality. And I think to both of your points, that's also something that can play out in our subsequent determination and after the hearing. And that approach makes sense to me as well. And I will join you both at that alternative to determine there does appear to be sufficient cause. Thank you.
Perfect. Sounds like we're all in the heat of agreement, so ready for a motion on this one. Thank you.
Yep.
Great.
Thank you. In 9300 SI 128, I move we determine that there does appear to be sufficient cause for the complaint alleging that Sister Bay's sewer rates to the town are unreasonable and unjustly discriminatory in violation of Wisconsin statute section 66.0821 sub 5, and instruct commission staff to proceed with a hearing consistent with our discussion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you both for another meeting of great discussion. That does conclude our official business for today. Our next open meeting is scheduled for Thursday, October 30th, 2025 at 10:30 a.m. May I have a motion to adjourn?
I move we stand adjourned until Thursday, October 30, 2025 at 10:30 a.m.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you.